Hello YouTube. Today we're going to be talking about bishop pins. So we're going to be taking a look at the opening after e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6. We're going to have the Italian game. We're going to go into a Gioco piano with bishop c5, d3, d6. We're going to have this very standard position that's been played millions of times, especially in scholastic chess and amateur games. And then after, say, knight c3, we're going to have this early pin with bishop g4. So how do we handle this pin? What do we do from here? What is the correct decision? What are the rules here? So if you like content like this and you want to see more of it, please hit that subscribe button, click on your notification icon. So the rule is when this pin happens, whenever you are pinned like this in the opening, you want to put a question to this bishop. You want to ask this bishop what it's doing. We call it putting the question to the bishop. And you should do that immediately. Like 99.9999% of the time, as soon as they make that pin happen, you need to be kicking that bishop on the next move. So the move pawn to h3 is just absolutely the correct move. Put the question to the bishop, ask it what it's doing. Ask it, are you going to exchange for the knight on f3? Are you going to move back? Are you going to move back here? What are you going to do? Okay, so if you don't do that, you can actually get into a lot of trouble. Like right here, if you were to just spend one lazy move and castle, your position would be completely lost immediately after knight d4. After knight d4, it's too late to turn back the clock. You can't decide to play h3 now and save the position. If you play h3 now, you're just getting killed. He would take with check, and then after takes, he would take that h3 pawn for free, and he's going to have almost a winning attack against your wide open king. Another thing that often happens here is people will just develop. They'll play something like bishop e3, which makes some sense. You are threatening to at least, get rid of the knight on d4 with the bishop, but you're just completely losing here. After knight f3, gf, bishop h3, rook e1, bishop takes e3, fe3, queen g5, and queen g2 is mate. And that's how a ton of games have actually ended in scholastic chess. This exact position has been on a lot of boards over the years because people let that pin stay, and they let it stay for one move too long. So going back, how do we handle it after we play h3? This is a really critical question. Now, if they play bishop e6, it's pretty straightforward. You have two choices, and they're both okay. You can play bishop b3, and then if they take on b3 and you play ab, you do have doubled pawns, but you have an open rook file for it. White's actually doing a little bit better there. Or you could even play bishop takes e6, fe6, and black has doubled pawns, but he has the open rook file for it. And actually, in both cases, white's doing a little bit better in both of those positions, interestingly enough. So either move is fine. Bishop takes e6 or bishop to b3 are both considered acceptable. So what do we do if they retreat? What do we do if they play bishop h5? If they take, obviously we're playing queen f3, and white's doing good there. But what do we do if they just retreat? What if they play bishop h5? Well, if they were castled already, like if the king was on g8, the rook was on f8, this would be pretty straightforward. We would play g4 right away, and we would start conducting a kingside attack against the black king, against the castled king. But black is not castled in this position, so we're not in a rush to play g4. It's wasting a tempo. We're still fighting for tempos in this opening. And right now we have a lot of stuff that we would rather do than play to g4. We're not in a rush to do this until black starts putting extra pressure on the knight. We want black to expend that energy before we're willing to make a huge weakening move for this. Chess is all about balance. When you take on e6, for example, when they retreat and you take on e6 and they take back with the f pawn, you have compensated for the fact that black has an open rook file by doubling black's pawns, and that maintains a balance. But if you play g4, you're creating a weakness, but you're not gaining a tempo. And that's really critical, is you can create weaknesses as long as you are gaining something for them. So what you need to do now is you need to play a move like knight d5, and if they play a move like knight d4 and pile the pressure on your knight, now the move g4 makes a ton of sense. Because this knight has spent a long time journeying, let's say all the way to the f3 square, for example, and that gave up a huge number of tempos. Sure, white has some weaknesses. Black has lost a ton of tempo. And because of that, black is actually going to be down a whole bunch of space. This is actually kind of an interesting position. White is actually quite a bit better here. For example, white can continue with b4, just gaining more space. Bishop b6, a4, c6, knight b6, a b6. and then bishop b3 is supposed to be just advantage white. White's doing really good. Another way that this position can kind of get played is if we have something like, say, bishop to h5, and then after, say, knight d5, we have knight d4, g4, and they don't take on f3. Like, let's just say they play bishop to g6. We can then take on d4, bishop d4, c3, and then the computer actually says that we do the same type of space-gaining plan with b4, bishop b6, and the computer likes this move f4. And it's saying that this is decisive advantage white. White is actually winning here, even though black infiltrates into the weaknesses. He can play queen h4 and take advantage of all this loose stuff, but the king just walks away from everything, goes to c2, and we get our pawn back. We have a huge center, and this bishop on g6 is basically permanently trapped. This knight on d5 is just an incredible, incredible piece. White should actually have a decisive position here. White's just doing amazingly well. So that's kind of, when you play h3 and they play bishop h5, that's kind of what's going on. h3, bishop h5, you're ready to play g4, but you're not in a rush to do it. You're going to be following up with knight d5, preparing to play pawn to c3, but meeting knight d4 with g4 is the basic idea. Now there's one other thing you kind of got to worry about when you have early bishop g4 pins. And it comes up more commonly, I would say, in the exchange variation of the Ruy Lopez. Like, for example, e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6. Let's say bishop to b5, knight, pawn to a6, takes, castles, bishop g4. We have this exact same pin. What should we do? We should put a question to the bishop. This is absolutely correct. h3. They're going to do h5. So this is actually a trap. This is called the fishing pole trap. Now, whenever they do the fishing pole trap, and it only works when your king is castled and their king isn't, and they're threatening to open the rook file, the main thing that you need to try to figure out is, can you take that bishop? Can you capture it? Is it a safe thing to do? Now, in this case, this is a well-known theoretical position. It is actually not safe to take the bishop. The main reason why is this queen is going to be flying into the h-file after you do. So, for example, h captures g4, h captures g4, you don't have the move knight to g5 because queen takes g5. So after the knight moves, the queen flies into the h-file. They're threatening mate on h2. You would play something like rook e1. They could even just play queen h2 right here, would be fine, but bishop c5 is much more precise, just putting pressure on the f2 square. d4 takes here, just rip. White's position is completely lost. So when can you take this bishop? Well, you have to threaten to take it. And you can threaten to take it by playing the move pawn to d3. Now the move knight g5 is actually a threat. So if they lost a tempo, if it were somehow white's move here, like maybe they play a6 to a5 or something, you could take and play knight g5. They can't easily get their queen to the h-file in the next couple of moves. You're effectively blocking off their attack. So what white usually does here, the main theoretical move, is this move queen f6. So what's the idea behind queen f6? Black is trying to make h takes g4 a bad idea again. Because now if h takes g4, we're going to have hg4, knight g5, now queen h6, threatening queen to h1 mate. We're going to have to block with the knight. This counterattacks the queen, but that's short-lived. The queen would just hold the pawn on g4. And we could, of course, move the knight back, try to block things up, but now the queen just shuffles to h5. The knight would have to go back, and we could even just take the knight right away here if we wanted to get our material back. The computer prefers just castling queenside, and it just says that this position is decisive advantage black. So when they do this fishing pole, and they continue to say, okay, you can't take it, you have to continue to say, okay, I'm going to threaten to take it. So you would have to play knight on b2. This is kind of the respected move here. They would play knight e7, rook e1. Again, just continuing to play moves until you can finally take this thing and hold everything together. Knight back to g6. And again, it's still not quite good to take it yet. So we're going to have d4, knight f4. And then finally, you can apparently get away with taking it. But black does get a lot of compensation for it. This was actually played in Karyakin versus Shirov in Odessa in 2010. And white did actually win this game, but the position was very unclear, and black actually had kind of a big attack in this game. And it was it's approximately level. It's a very unclear position, but it's approximately level. So that's kind of how you handle it, is you just need to keep threatening to take that bishop until eventually you can capture that bishop, and at the very least capture it and not get checkmated. So that's how you handle bishop pins. That's how you handle the main theme here, is whenever they pin you, you really need to put a question to that piece immediately. You need to play pawn to h3, put the question to the piece, ask them what they're doing. Are they going to take on f3? Are they going to retreat? Are they going to go for some sort of fishing pole trap with pawn to h5? Is that fishing pole trap sound? Can you just take it right away? You need to put the question to that piece, and you need to make them make a decision. If you leave that pin for any length of time at all, you can get in a whole lot of trouble, and you just really want to avoid that. So anyways, I hope you found this video helpful. I hope you learned something new about chess, and I hope you can use these ideas in your own games. Thank you very much for watching.